Welcome to the 700 Club. Streets are now rivers in the Florida Panhandle. Hundreds of people have been rescued from their homes and thousands more at risk from Hurricane Sally's fury.
And it's not over yet. Sally is now a slow-moving super soaker, bringing heavy rains from Florida up to North Carolina. Jenna Browder reports.
Slow-moving Sally is bearing down on the Deep South, leaving behind a trail of destruction as it swept through the Gulf Coast.
I mean, just look at the sheer damage of this building. A whole second half ripped to the ground.
Buildings stripped bare, streets turned into fast-moving rivers.
The wind has just been relentless here in downtown Pensacola. This is Main Street, and it's just nuking Whitecaps with this storm surge. Debris, traffic lights littering this street.
And wind so strong, this church now looks like this. But the major issue is the drenching rain.
Bellevue, Florida, 30 inches of rain has been reported, and that matches our AccuWeather local storm max that we were forecasting for. Destin, Florida, 24.52 inches of rain.
The rapidly rising floodwaters trapping people in their homes.
Evacuations could literally be in the thousands. So it's going to be a long time, folks, for us to come out of this thing.
So far, hundreds of people have been rescued.
We're in chest deep water.
We just did not expect that. I think a lot of people didn't realize what this hurricane was going to do.
The rain was pouring through the cracks of the doors, but at a point it was just flowing in.
Dozens of roads are washed out. A chunk of this major bridge swept away after a construction barge slammed into it. And it's not over yet.
Flash flooding has already occurred this morning, and some road closures are still going to be likely. As we have these bright green flashing boxes, this is where we have our ongoing flooding right now throughout portions of Atlanta, Macon. And then looking at those darker shades of green, flash flood watches, meaning not yet flooding, but has the potential to as that moisture continues to track into portions of the Carolinas.
CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground.
What we're looking at for Sally is doing a lot of relief work for non-perishables, water, cleaning kits, supplies along those lines. We're also standing by to assess if we need to help do muck and guts of homes and dry out homes and do any repair work for like tarping roofs or debris cleanup.
And more help is on the way. 200 National Guard members are headed to Pensacola. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
If you want to be a part of Operation Blessings Relief Act, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call us. 1-800-700-7000 and say, I want to give to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. There's also a place you can mail us, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Or you can go to cbn.com. There's a place where you can designate your gift to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief. Either way, do it now. 1-800-700-7000. In other news, President Trump says a few coronavirus vaccine makers are now in the home stretch and could reach the finish line as soon as next month. Well, how does that statement contradict the testimony of his own CDC director? Well, Lori Johnson explains.
CDC Director Robert Redfield surprised people during a Senate hearing by saying a mask is more protective than a vaccine and that the drug's rollout will be so slow, some Americans will have to wait until this time next year to get one. Only hours later, President Trump contradicted both statements.
I think he made a mistake when he said that. It's just incorrect information. And I called him. And he didn't tell me that, and I think he got the message maybe confused. Maybe it was stated incorrectly.
New task force advisor Dr. Scott Atlas told reporters all high-risk people will be vaccinated by January and everyone else by the end of March.
Within the first 24 hours of FDA's approval under an emergency use, we will have vaccines being delivered within the first 24 hours. And it will be done at virtually no cost to Americans.
Initially, the military will help distribute the vaccine to 51,000 outlets nationwide, including 14,000 health centers in minority areas.
Number one is safety, number two is speed, but you can have perfect safety and have much more speed, and that's what we did.
The president accused Joe Biden and Kamala Harris of playing politics by scaring people who need the vaccine.
I'm calling on Biden to stop promoting his anti-vaccine theories, because all they're doing is hurting the importance of what we're doing. And I know that if they were in this position, they'd be saying how wonderful it is. They're recklessly endangering lives. You can't do that.
Meanwhile, pro-life advocates continue to express concern about vaccine manufacturers using unethical practices.
Some of them have chosen to use aborted fetal tissue in the production of the vaccines. How are you balancing out to be able to make sure that there will be an ethical alternative for individuals that don't want to take a vaccine that's also produced using the tissue of an aborted child?
Experts say eventually Americans will have their choice of vaccines. Indeed, the president said a number of different vaccines will likely be approved.
More on this story, Lori Johnson joins us. Well, can you answer Senator Langford's question? Will there be an ethical alternative that won't include aborted fetal tissue?
That's the hope, Gordon, and it looks that way right now. We know that right now it appears the most promising vaccine is one that the president was talking about yesterday, the Pfizer vaccine. We know that that was not manufactured or developed using fetal tissue from aborted babies. And yesterday during the news conference, he hinted that Pfizer might be the first one over the finish line by saying that he's constantly updated on information about how the trials are going and that Pfizer's looks really good. He also said that Pfizer is spending billions of dollars right now to manufacture millions of doses based on the information coming from their trials. And also separately, the CEO of Pfizer said recently that it looks like by October they will know definitively whether their vaccine is safe and effective. And we also know that Pfizer recently expanded their phase 3 clinical trials from the requisite 30,000 to 44,000. This is good because it also includes a lot of minorities. And we know that people who are African American and Hispanics are disproportionately affected by the coronavirus vaccine.
Well, let's talk about the safety of it. I mean, there's some that are saying the rush to complete a vaccine may compromise things. And I, for one, don't particularly want to sign up to be a guinea pig. Can people actually trust what's going to be released?
Well, Gordon, whether it's a vaccine or surgery, any medical procedure should be considered using two key elements: the risk and the benefit. You have to weigh out the risk and the benefit. And health experts say regarding the coronavirus vaccine that the benefit is very high and the risk is very low. We know that in an unprecedented event, 9 major vaccine manufacturers, their competitors, remember, they banded together recently to assure the general public that they will not request an approval by the FDA until the standards of safety and efficacy meet their golden standards, their very high standards. And so also separate and apart from that, we know that there's an independent review board of medical experts that are not associated with the government or the pharmaceutical industry that review all of the data and make their recommendation to the FDA. This is standard protocol. Usually the FDA follows their recommendation.
All right, Laurie, thanks for your insights. And for the viewers, we will keep you posted on this and on this story and ethical alternatives. What is the latest information? Lori Johnson will keep you updated. All you have to do is track into CBNnews.com. Well, today, September 17th, celebrates Constitution Day, marking the key document's ratification. Paul Strand explains how the Bible helped shape our founding document.
The U.S. Constitution, written and signed by our founding fathers, sits here in the National Archives. These founders saw themselves as men of faith and used what they learned in God's Word to help them form their new nation's law and government.
So I like to say it's not that we established a Christian country, but without Christian values, we would never establish this kind of country. We're shaped by the Bible.
Outside the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, historian Peter Lilbach showed me phrase by phrase how the preamble of the Constitution reflects these biblical values.
It begins by saying, we the people of the United States come together to make a more perfect union. They want to be one. They know they can't be perfect. That's a biblical idea. We're trying to get better. We can progress.
Then establish justice. Lilback quotes Micah 6:8.
The Lord has shown you what he requires of you, O man, that you would do justice and love mercy. Justice is a biblical concern.
Ensure domestic tranquility.
Paul will say in Romans chapter 12, as much as lies within me, I will live at peace with all men.
Provide for the common defense.
So we know that one of the great principles of God's law is to defend the orphan and the widow.
Promote the general welfare.
We should do good to all men, especially to those of the household of faith.
And secure the blessings of liberty.
I always like to say that the word blessing is a word you don't hear atheists using. The very nature of blessing is something that's being given to us from God. And liberty is something that God has blessed us with.
And then the Constitution lays out our legislative and judicial and executive branches of government. And all three reflect different aspects of God himself that are shown in the Bible.
In Isaiah 33:22, where it talks about how our God is a God who's a lawgiver. He is, in fact, a judge. He is also a king or a ruler. Again, derivative of God's very word, God's very nature.
Lilback sums up what the Bible did for America through our founders.
By learning from his word, we gain wisdom, and that wisdom creates, if you will, the longest continuously used Constitution on the face of the earth.
And September 17, 2020, marks the 233rd birthday of that historic freedom-guaranteeing document. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the National Archives.
Well, it's Happy Constitution Day. Keep in mind that the Lord is mentioned in the Constitution. You find it in Article 6, where it talks in the year of our Lord. The framers of the Constitution, they were a variety of different degrees of Christian. You had Thomas Jefferson, who was he didn't like any of the miracles, so he wanted a New Testament with no miracles. You had Ben Franklin, who was strongly influenced by George Whitefield. Whitefield even stayed in his home. He wouldn't be called a Christian by evangelical standards today. He was sort of a deist. But they all believed in God, and they all held together and said, we need to have freedom of conscience. We need to have freedom of speech. We need to have freedom of religion. They were coming out of a Europe where the state-established religions were a horror, where people would be killed, literally killed, for being baptized as an adult. So they wanted freedom. They wanted liberty. And we need to recognize that. This is not a theocracy. It never will be. I would never want that. But it is a nation founded by Christians. And they understood what was in the Bible. And in the book of Daniel, you had the Ancient of Days come, and then he gives the government to the Son of Man. He gives the government to the Messiah. And then what does the Messiah do? The Messiah, in turn, gives the government to the saints of the Most High God. And you can't have a clearer expression of that than we the people. It's an amazing thing. We live in an amazing country. We need to celebrate what came out of Europe, the ideas of the Reformation, the ideas of liberty, the ideas that people could be free, and especially the idea that people could be self-governing. You don't need a lot of dictates. You don't need a dictator. What you need are free people with a free conscience who are one nation under God. Let me underline that one, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Happy Constitution Day.